Hi everyone, so welcome back. Now just a quick recap. What have we done so far? Okay, so what we've done is we've created the shape of the speaker. We've added a USB insert here and also the on button. We have also added a bump map on top of the speaker to give us the controls. So we have the microphone, the plus button, the negative button, the play and the pause button. So all of those buttons are here now on the top. Next, what we need to do is we need to focus on applying the grid. So the first thing what we need to do, before we can apply the grid, what we're going to do is we will be preparing the material for the displacement map. So the method that we're going to use is apply a displacement map to provide us the grid which is slightly curved all the way around. That saves us a lot of time in creating the actual geometry for the curvature. So it's a much quicker way and way more powerful way to do the speaker grid, which is going to be located here where my cursor is. So without further ado, let's start with preparing the material. Before we go ahead, let's first clean up some of the materials that we already have here. So if we look at this one here, this is I believe the displacement map for the top speaker. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically give it a name so that we can organize ourselves a little bit better. So top material. So that's let's call it SP for speaker dot top. And this one here is for the body of the speaker. So let's just call that SP, right? It's for speaker. Now we're not using this material at all, so we can actually remove that one. So now we've got two materials, one for the body and one for the top of the speaker. So the next thing what we need to do is add the grid material. So let's go ahead and add a random material. So material and just an empty one, that will do. Just to match the rest of the materials, what I'm going to do is going to decrease the reflection. So reflection goes back down to 0. So it matches the body of the material. I'm going to give this a name as well. I'm going to call this the sp.grid. Okay. All right. Double click. And this is what we should end up with. Let's just grab that, move it to the side. Now, what we need to do is we need to provide it a normal map, opacity map, a displacement map, etc. So let's start with the normal map. Now, one way to do this is to basically go to your folder, wherever that may be. One way is to actually just go ahead and add the texture and then add the link. A quicker way is just simply grab and drop. So that's what we're going to do here. So this is the normal map. I'm going to go further. I'm going to add the opacity and displacement. And what else do we have? We have the roughness. Yeah. Okay, so this is what I'm going to do here. It's very simple, straightforward. Now for the normal map, for the bump map, which is basically what the normal map here is supposed to be doing, what we're going to do is we're going to have to translate that into an RS bump map. So the way to go about doing that is to add a node. So we're just going to add a bump map node here. Excellent. We're going to attach the out color to the input of the bump map and the out of the bump map into, and if you just hold it above the RS material, you should actually get the bump map appearing. So if you hold it where it says overall, and it will basically show the children parameters of the overall parent of the RS material. So we're just going to link it to the bump map there. Now opacity, it goes straight to opacity. So we're going to grab the out color of the opacity, hover above the RS material, and we're just going to link it as such. Displacement map, we need a displacement map converter. So what we're going to do is we're going to type in displacement map, and there it is. We're going to link the displacement map to the displacement map node, and we are going to go straight out of the displacement map over into the output of the displacement map. Notice how it's actually changed shape even prior to the displacement. So if I remove the displacement map, notice how the bump map has already created the displacement that we want. Okay, this adds another layer of displacement, and it gives us more control in the control panels as to what the displacement should look like. Now, another thing is that we need to attach the roughness, so we can do that. We can change these textures and make it rough and make it, add more things like we can bring it into Adobe Substance and add scratches and etc. But given this is a product demo, usually the products are pristine and nice and glossy, and that's not what we want here. If we're going to do like a ultra realistic real world type of scenario, we might want to work on the roughness and add some different textures and so forth. But for the time being, we don't need to do that. So this is the actual textures mapped to the materials, which will give us the RS material sp.grid. So what we're going to do is just close that. So we've done that. Excellent. So now just to see how that works, if I'm just going to grab a little cube, okay, it's a very large cube because obviously we've got a very small 16.8 centimeter speaker here. So I'm just going to grab that, decrease the height so it's nice and small, move it a little bit closer to the speaker. I'm just going to zoom in. And I'm just going to grab this grid and I'm just going to apply it. So you can see how that works. Okay, so the grid just basically works as a material and you can apply it to any object you wish. So what we're going to do is we're going to do this exact same thing, and we are going to apply it on the speaker. So let's go ahead and remove the cube. We don't need that anymore. And let's hit save so that we don't lose our work. Particularly when we change geometry. When we start changing geometry, I really recommend you always do an incremental save. So you go to File and do a Save Incremental. Okay, now let's go ahead and think about where we're going to place a speaker. We're going to place a speaker right here. Okay, now in order to do that, we need to make sure that we are placing it in the correct place. So let's have a look at what the actual speaker should look like. So if we look at the speaker sizing, we can see that the top lip is there, so we got that. Then we got this bottom lip, right? And the speaker, the grid should be right here. And we need to basically, we can eyeball this or be super accurate and apply proper measurement. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this line and match the distance between the very top to the indentation here. And I'm just going to raise this one a little bit higher up. And basically all I'm going to do is make sure that my distance from the very top edge, very similar to what we see here, to the indented part is the same. So from here to here, we're going to basically grab this line and make this distance equal to that distance. So let's go ahead and do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure my speaker is selected, make sure that that I'm in the edge mode. Make sure my brush selection is there. Select any of the edges, hit UL and click. Now when I got click, remember always you're looking for orange. All right, so once I've got that there, I'm just going to do a quick spin around to make sure there's nothing else might be affected. Nope. So what I'm going to do is just going to simply grab the move option and just move it up a little bit. And I'm just going to eyeball this. So the distance from here to here should be the same as the distance from here to here. So just eyeball it, that should be enough. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to do the same thing, and we're going to do the same thing down the bottom here. Okay, so we already have a line here. So, and it actually looks pretty accurate. The distance from here to here and there is actually pretty much the same. So what we can do is we can leave that line exactly where it is. So next, how do we select where the grid should be? So the easiest way to do this is go to the polygon mode, go to rectangle selection, and instead of doing on the side, what we can do is simply go straight to the top view. So if I go to F1, F2 is the top view, Alt. Now this is the top view here, and this is the part of the grid that we want to select. So I'm currently in the rectangle selection mode. So I'm just going to drag across everything. Now it says here visible only. That means all I'm going to do is tag only the visible polygons. If I go back to my F1 mode, so that's all I've tagged. Now that's not what I want. I want to make sure that all my surfaces underneath here are actually tagged or selected. So I'm going to remove visible only, go back to F2 and do that again. Now, if I go back to F1, notice how all my polygon surfaces are selected, which is exactly what I want to do. Next, I want to remove these two areas, this one and this one. So the way I go about doing that is simply holding my control key while I still am in the rectangle selection mode and just dragging across from left to right using the left mouse button, and there we go. Okay, so now I've basically removed these two top layers. So I'm just going to Alt and drag down again and do the exact same thing down the bottom here. Oop. Remember, holding control and moving the left mouse button. Okay, so zooming out, let's have a look. Okay, great. So now let's do another save incremental, make sure that we're good. And next, what I want to do is I want to essentially split this from the remainder of the geometry. So the same way we did the speaker, the top is part of the speaker where we split it from the geometry. So now this is an object in its own right. This is going to become the third object. So we've got the speaker, we've got the top of the speaker, and this is going to become the speaker.grid. So what we're going to do is we're going to right button to click, go to split, and we are going to rename this to grid. Okay, so now we've got the grid, which is here, and we've got the main speaker, and obviously we've got the top of the speaker as well. So next, let's hit subsurface and have a look at what's going on here. But notice how the moment we've done that, we also have this geometric change and impact and that's happening, which is going to definitely affect how the grid's going to be applied. So what we want to do is make sure that these lines are as close as possible to where our speaker grid starts. So the way we're going to do that is highlight speaker, and we will be placing a few lines, a few cuts, right, to pull that in. So I'm going to keep the subdivision surface on as I apply the cuts on the blue grid lines. So what we're going to do now is simply go into the edge mode. We are going to the loop path cut, and we are going to place a cut here. And notice how it pulled that line straight in. And now we're going to go down and we're going to do the same here. There we go. So next, what we want to do is we want to go and do the same thing on the other side. There, and down the bottom. Okay, so that should provide us a nice square or a nice angle there. Right now, if you want to get super tight, you can grab this line, bring it a little bit higher up, which is what I might want to do right now. So I'm just going to click this, double click. No, that doesn't bring the loop. Let me go to UL and highlight that line. Am I in the line? No, I'm in the polygon selection. Let's change to the edge mode, and there we go. So now orange, it's clicked. So I'm just going to get the move option selected, and I'm just going to bring it up there. Okay. Let's make sure nothing else in my geometry is broken or changed in any way, shape, or form. My buttons are still exactly where they need to be, so that hasn't been impacted. Okay, great. Excellent. So this loops all the way around, so I'm assuming it would have done it here as well. Oh, okay, now we can see there's been a slight impact. So let's undo that and have a closer look at this. Okay, so what it's done is it's picked up another edge here. So you've got to be careful with these kind of things. So we're going to hold Control, click that, that, or just select the rectangle and select all these ones here. Okay, And now what we can do is redo that. So you've got to be careful when you actually do a loop selection. Just make sure that the actual loop does not interfere with any other part of the geometry. So now we're going to go and select this edge. Okay, UL, highlight it, spin around. Let's have a look if this, oh, you can see now that's actually grabbed this particular edge, which would have been a complete disaster for us. So what we want to do is remove that edge, and the way we're going to do that is simply go to rectangle selection, hold down the control button, and highlight that area that we do not want that particular edge to transform. We do want it to end here. So let's go ahead and do a shift select, change to brush selection, and there. Okay. Now we're just going to bring that one up a little bit higher there to get that angle a little bit sharper. So now let's have a quick look around, make sure we have not made any further damages to geometry, that the geometry is still good and valid. Yeah. Okay, so let's do a NA so we can actually look at the geometry from a different perspective. Good. And highlight another place. Okay, great. Now what we want to do is apply the grid material. So the way you do that is simply grab the RS material, drag it, and drop it onto the speaker grid. Remove the original material, and there you have it. So now you've applied the grid material to the speaker, and everything looks great. Problem is the scaling. The scaling is all wrong. Okay, so what we got to do is we got to start thinking about how we're going to shrink the scaling. The best way to do that, either from the inside of the RS manager, you can do it from here, or the quickest and easiest way is simply go to the actual material itself on the grid and notice how it changes down the bottom. Now, what I do recommend is start working on the tiling. So if I start increasing the tiling, I can see that the grid holes are getting smaller, but I want them to be super small. So they need to really reflect or be similar to these holes. So now these holes are currently very large. So I'm just going to keep on going until I find the size or the vertical size that I want, and then I'll work on the horizontal sizing there. Now that's still very let me try to get a bit closer in so you can actually see. Okay. Now, the best time, the best time right now it's the best time right now to bring the Redshift materials view in, so you can actually see how it's rendering, and that could also help you with the evaluating the holes that you need here. Okay, so now let's hit play. Okay, and now notice how also our material is deformed in the render view. Look at that. It looks very horrible. It does not look like what's here in the view plane. So it's rendering it out very differently. And that's what happens when you use the displacement maps. So what I want to do right now is let me get the sizing of the holes right, and then I'll work on applying the correct material or the correct material type on this particular speaker. So now what I'm going to do is just go back to my materials and keep on decreasing the hole sizes until I feel that I'm getting closer to what I want. And now let me have a look at how I'm supposed to fix this. So now notice how the projection of the material is using UVW mapping. Now that's really, really good when you're applying it on rocks, stones, things of that nature. But when you're doing it on a curved cylindrical object, you might want to think about projecting it on something else. So notice how you got spherical, cylindrical, flat, cubic, etc., etc. What you can do, if you don't have tripolar here, which we don't, and that's a completely different course, what we can do is we can just go straight to cylindrical. And notice how straight away it's made it a lot better and a lot smoother, which is fantastic, but it still has these kinks. And also at the same time, the tiling has completely changed. So what we've got to do now is have a look at our displacement map. So if I go ahead into my materials and have a look at what the displacement map settings are. So if I go to the output, I'm going to have a look at what the displacement scale is. So you can see here, we have an option here to increase the displacement or decrease the displacement. Now what I want to do is, let me just move this to the side, is I want to decrease the displacement because it's really making a lot of chaos here for us. So let's just have a broader view as to what's going on. So you can see here on the right hand side, it's completely doing a whole lot of displacements that we really do not need. So what we're going to do is going to bring down the scaling of the displacement, and notice how that's starting to work for us. So if we go on one extreme, a lot of displacement, bring it down, and bring it further down. Now it's bringing the displacement in, and we want the displacement to basically coincide with the rest of the geometry. So let me just decrease the sizing of the grid. So again, we're going to go back to the object view, and we're going to click the material tag of the grid, and we're going to start increasing this furthermore. Again, that's way too large. We're getting there. So let me just type in 100. That's more accurate. And let me increase the U tiles to say 10. So that's 110. So that's 100 for the tile U's, and tiles V, it's 100. That's actually pretty close. Let me just get out of this view, and let me get in a little bit closer. Notice how the displacement as well has pulled it right into the body of the geometry. So what we've got to do is we'll do some more work on that scaling. So we'll come back to that later. Okay, I'm just doing a bit of a survey to see where everything is. Okay, yeah, we can see that the displacements are not quite aligned with the rest of the body. So let's go back to the RS grid material, and displacements are always going to be seen on render. So that's one thing that you need to know, is that during the viewport view, they could look absolutely fantastic, but actually during the render, which is where the actual displacement is going to occur, that's where you're going to start seeing problems. So let's go back to displacement, and let's have a look at, if we go to the left, yeah, it's getting closer to what we need. However, it starts deforming. So if you go here, have a look at that. The deformation, it starts to deform a little bit, change shape. We don't want that. This is where the displacement starts kicking in. See how that kink is happening? So we want to basically go closer to 0. So we don't want the displacement map to be impacting us too much. So let's go there. Okay, that's much better and much cleaner. So if we go down, excellent. I think we might want to go with this displacement setting and scale. So if I hit scale down to 0, so displacement is 0. So basically there is no scaling that's happening, no displacement scaling is happening at all. So basically it should be aligned to the original object as much as possible. Okay, that's pretty good. We're going to keep it at 0 because we want it to be aligned very, very well with the original. So that's the grid. Now, I still feel that the holes of the grid are a little bit too big. So what we're going to do is we're going to continue decreasing them. So let's go to 15 and 150. Yep, that seems a lot more reasonable and a lot better. Okay, great. I think we're close to finishing this. Now, another thing that we need to do, notice how it's very transparent. So what we've got to do is we're going to create a clone of the speaker grid, and we are going to remove the displacement grid and just make it black or dark. So therefore, that's going to make sure that when you come close into the product, you're not going to end up seeing the back of the holes here or anything like that, especially when you apply a bit of light. So we do want to avoid that. So if I go ahead and apply a bit of light here, you're going to end up actually seeing what's in the inside on the other side of the speaker. We don't want that. You can actually see how dark it is here. That's because the background here is dark. But if we had another object, you actually end up seeing part of the object through the grid. So what we want to do is we want to put another clone just behind this particular grid, and that's going to disguise the fact that you know, we don't have any electronics inside, but it's going to provide us that bit of cover that we need. So the way we're going to do this is hold the left mouse button on the speaker grid and hold Control, and then click the speaker grid and just drag it underneath. We are going to call this grid and clone. Right, so that's the inside of the actual object. Now what we need to do is actually highlight it. We will be scaling it so that let's highlight the object mode. So in the object mode, we've got scale selected, and we're just going to scale it inwards a little bit on the XZ axis, but we're going to keep the Y axis the same. So scale it in. Now if we scale it out, that's how that looks. If we scale it in, we know that it's maybe a few tens of millimeters behind the front of the screen. And now what we're going to do is, if you actually look at it here, you can actually see how the yellow bit's inside. So what we're going to do is now, instead of giving it that material, we are going to swap the displacement material. So we're going to remove that, and we're going to replace that with a darker material. So we're going to grab the body of the speaker, hold Control, and just drag it down, and we're going to basically make this a darker material to give it a nice dark shade inside. Move it across, and there we go. So now we've got a dark shader inside the grid material, and that gives us that view as if there's something inside the actual Sonos application, Sonos speaker. Now notice again, I still feel that the actual grid size is a little bit too large. So I think what we're going to do is just go one more layer or one more level down. So we're going to go to say 180 and 18, 180. Okay. And also the grid clone, let's also bring that a little bit closer to the edge. Okay, great. Now let's have a look how that looks on the right hand side. Do a incremental save. Okay, so we've done the top, we've done the grid, and what's left to do is essentially we're going to put the Sonos logo here, and we are also going to put a few lights. So we know that we have a light here, here, and also on the top of the speaker right here. So that will be the next challenge. And yeah, I'll see you in the next lecture. Thank you guys. Bye bye.